Hi, I'm Carly with Builds by Carly. We're here in beautiful Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and today we're showing you two of our tree houses. So today we're here with Andrew Whaley of ETS, and he is our foundation specialist when it comes to building a house that's entirely elevated. So Andrew, why don't you go ahead and just tell everybody what we're actually looking at here.
All right, Carly, so this is our first of a couple tree houses we have here on the site. And what we did on the foundation for this one is we've got some continuous footings with concrete columns coming out of the footings. And this is going to be your support system for the treehouse.
So what goes into coming up with your design or plans as far as the footing goes before we even get into what our pier options are?
Well, the first thing we want to do is take a look at our existing ground conditions, make sure that they're suitable for the bearing pressure that the structure will present. So we look here and we've got some very good bearing conditions. We call this material weathered shale. It's got a really high allowable bearing capacity, and so we know our soil's good, and then we use a combination of concrete and reinforcing steel to support the foundation.
And then when it comes to the reinforcing steel, as far as you're talking just on the footers right now, right? Not on the piers?
Well, it's a combination. So concrete works very good in compression, and steel works very good in tension. And so you combine the two to make a foundation system. So we have our continuous footings that are reinforced with steel, and then we also have reinforcing steel coming up out of those continuous footings into these concrete columns.
So Andrew, what are all the components that go into how you design, like rebar size, footer size? Is it the house size? Is it the elevation that the house is going to sit at? Like, what general components do you look for when you're coming up with the factors you want to see with the footers and the piers?
Well, it's kind of a combination of both. So you want to look at your anticipated loads of the structure, and then you want to look at your, as I mentioned earlier, the soil bearing capacity. But what we've done is basically utilized an industry standard on our steel design and our concrete design, so that what you have here is what's considered acceptable by commercial construction standards.
When it comes to the footer, of course, we've pointed out, and you and I have talked about how these aren't individual pier footers, and some people that might be in a similar trade might wonder why, but we've gone with the continuous. So what it went with your decision to say we want a continuous footer here versus individual pier footers?
Yeah, so it's twofold, the advantage of having the continuous footings in combination with the columns. Number one is it's easier on the contractor to do. When they're up here with a machine, they can simply dig a straight line, and it's a lot easier than having to dig individual holes. So easier on the contractor. Number two, it allows for each of these concrete columns to be connected to the same continuous footing. And so it gives a lot more stability and support for the structure.
Okay, so probably typically when we have a looser soil or something that's not as supportive, we would definitely want a continuous footer.
That's right.
Whereas maybe a really good and a perfect situation soil, we could do the individual piers if we want to make it harder on the excavation company.
Yeah. I don't know that it was 100% necessary to do this, but it definitely...
It doesn't hurt.
Right. It was definitely the more conservative option. And you know, our reputation as foundation engineers, we tend to lean on the conservative side, and that's what we've done here.
And I'd prefer that.
Right.
I like knowing this is extremely structurally sound with the whole house being in the air.
Right.
So for those who don't know or are a little unfamiliar at what they're looking at, our piers here, these are our deck piers, but these are our house piers. So this is the ground floor level of the house. So when this house is complete, the entire house is essentially going to be sitting on top of these piers, which elevates it pretty high off the ground. I'm not the tallest person, but you can see it's a lot taller than me. So Andrew, that's probably a good time to lead into how you come up with the specs and design on the actual piers. Of course, we went with sonotubes this time, which is a little bit different for us. So I believe the diameter plays a big role. All the elements play a role in how you come up with the diameter, in addition to how they, I guess, cage it inside with rebar.
Right, so one of the things that's important when working with concrete and steel is you want to have adequate, what they call coverage of your steel, to make sure that you get concrete cover all the way around it. And so based on the size of our sonotube, it allowed us to get enough reinforcing steel in that column and also cover it with enough concrete to where we're sure this thing is going to be adequate for support.
So we've talked about the footings, we've talked about the piers, but is there a way that those two actually tie together?
Yeah, it's one of the more critical concepts of this design, is that our continuous reinforcing steel runs through the continuous footings and then comes out of the footings into the concrete columns. It was done in two separate pours, so we poured the continuous footings first, but then the rebar that comes out of the continuous footing into the column, we pour new concrete into the sonotube. So you've got two stages of pours, but it's all one continuous footing connected by that reinforcing steel.
And that makes sense, and it ties back into when we talked about the continuous footer, whereas if you had individual piers, I'm assuming you'd be in a little bit different scenario.
Right. This concept allows for a much more conservative design on your structure. Not that you necessarily needed it, because this is not a very big structure or a particularly heavy structure. The way we've designed this foundation is a conservative model for a foundation system, for sure.
For one of these smaller houses.
Right, yeah.
Not a very big footprint.
Right.
So we're actually doing our azalea model where we're standing right now. So it's a Scandinavian style, what will be treehouse, and it's 575 square feet. So the footprint just really isn't that big, which is what Andrew's referring to when they keep in mind all of the technical aspects that go into this. So I'm gonna let you guys in on a little insider tip here, a little trade secret. So what we're looking at here is you see conduit that's stubbed out of this pier, but you don't see that on any other pier. So what you're looking at is actually our water and sewer lines. So this piece of conduit right here is our sewer line, and this is for our water line. Now, this piece of conduit is actually going to have PEX inside of it, which is flexible. So this is really a sleeve, which means if for some reason there was a failure inside of this pier, we can pull that out and repair it. Now on sewer, unfortunately, we don't have the same option. So we've got a 90-degree turn in here, and conduit does not bend like that. So we can't sleeve the sewer, but as a default backup option, if for some reason there was a failure in here, we could then run the conduit on the outside of the post and build a box around it, which we've done on previous builds. But doing this, it's a way that you can get a nicer aesthetic and tie this into your pier without having anything bulky on the outside. Because if we do run on the outside, we'd be building a box that's more rectangular on a circular item. So a little bit of a trade secret there. It's a way for a nicer aesthetic, but you always want to make sure that your building department's okay with it, that somebody signed off on it. It'd be best to have your engineer involved. So if you have an engineer on your project like we do, then they could decide if it's safe to actually include this inside of your pier. So always check with your resources and have somebody sign off on this before you do the same thing. So I mentioned that we were building not one, but two tree houses here. And now I'm standing at the house seat of our second tree house, which is our Lily model, which is a true A-frame tiny house. And then of course in the background here, our azalea model, which is a Scandinavian style house that we talked about at the beginning of the video. Well, Andrew, we really appreciate the time that you came out to meet us, to really get the viewer to understand what we're looking at here, and we appreciate all of the hard work that you put into all of our builds. So
absolutely,
thank you for everything.
I'm really excited for you.
If you'd like to see progress updates on both of these tree houses, more behind the scenes construction footage, or a full time lapse of each of these builds, like, comment, and subscribe.